With the situation in Hong Kong. We have 300,000 Canadians who live in Hong Kong, and that's one of the reasons why we want to ensure that the one country, two systems approach continues for Hong Kong. We have long called for a de-escalation of tensions and genuine dialogue with Hong Kong, between Hong Kong citizens and Beijing.
China is making a move to rein in Hong Kong and its democracy activists. The Chinese government is aiming to put in place new security laws that would essentially quash any anti-government protests in the region. Is this the end of any autonomy for Hong Kong? And can Canada or any other country do anything to step in? Guy Saint-Jacques is Canada's former ambassador to China. He joins us from Montreal. Hello, Mr. Saint-Jacques. Nice to see you. I hope you're doing well.
Yes, and good to see you, Mrs. Napier.
So now China plans to impose this new security law on Hong Kong that the U.S. Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, has openly criticized, angering the Chinese, urging Beijing to respect civil liberties. But mainland China wants to pass a law that would, quote, ban treason, secession, sedition, and subversion. In simple terms, those protests that we saw at the beginning of the year, the calls for freedom and democracy, that would all be forbidden. And what would be the penalty if there were any of these protests?
Well, I must say that I was very glad when I saw earlier today that the UK, Australia, and Canada jointly issued a statement calling on China to abide by the principle of the one country, two system. And this is very important because, in fact, the success of Hong Kong depends on its independence, on the rule of law. China should know better because they rely on Hong Kong to a large extent in terms of foreign investment. Since about 70% of investment going into China goes through Hong Kong. Furthermore, according to the one country, two system principle, it should be for the Hong Kong legislature to pass such a law. In fact, there was an attempt back in 1993 to adopt the law, which was soundly defeated. But of course, the leadership in Beijing is getting very angry with the ongoing demonstration in Hong Kong as it is getting close to the one-year anniversary. And they also have in mind that June 4th is coming very shortly. And every year in Hong Kong on June 4th, you have a very large demonstration to protest what happened on Tiananmen Square on June 4th, 1989.
Okay, so you heard the Prime Minister. There are 300,000 Canadians in Hong Kong. How do you figure you figure they're safe? You talk about this June 4th demonstration. Do you predict a crackdown?
Well, we will have to watch the situation very carefully because, of course, with the ongoing pandemic, rules have been applied in Hong Kong as everywhere else to prevent people from gathering. In fact, what I expect now is that Democrats in Hong Kong will want to protest against this proposed law that is most likely going to be adopted at some point by the National People's Congress in Beijing. And if so, there could be, if there are demonstrations, these could turn violent. The police seems to not hesitate anymore to use force, and then it could unravel, and then we could face with a major problem if there is something dramatic and casualties in Hong Kong. That would put the Canadian government, but also other Western governments, in a very difficult position. I think what should be done at this stage would be to warn Beijing that if such a thing were to occur, there would be sanctions that would be adopted right after that.
Okay, I don't have a lot of time, but I'm interested in those sanctions and in Canada taking a harder stand against China. But aren't Ottawa's hands somewhat tied? We have two Canadians in Chinese jails, Michael Kovrig and Michael Spavor, and also the fact that we do need PPEs from China. So on the one hand, we don't want any harm on these two men, and we need the PPEs, so we can't really anger the Chinese. So really, Canada is a very tight spot and has to tread carefully, unlike maybe Australia or Britain.
Well, you're right, but at the same time, the Prime Minister has to keep in mind that if something dramatic occurs in Hong Kong and we are forced to evacuate 300,000 Canadians, just think about how massive an effort this would require. Furthermore, we would see also lots of requests from people living in Hong Kong that would want to immigrate to Canada. And so for those reasons, I think it's important for the federal government to try to put as much pressure on the Chinese government to try to get them to not to do anything dramatic or harsh in Hong Kong. And keeping in mind that, yes, we are in a difficult position, but so far the strategy with regard to Mr. Kovic and Spaver has produced no result. They are still there a year and a half after having been arrested. And so it's difficult for the government to maneuver, but at the same time, they have to keep in mind that we have a huge stake in Hong Kong.
Guy Saint-Jacques, Canada's former ambassador to China. Thank you so much, sir. Have a lovely weekend.
You too. Thank you.